Today, we're going to be making a custom tag mechanic that manages and tracks players in custom teams. It'll sort players into two different teams of runners and taggers, then allow the taggers to convert the runners they pickaxe into taggers themselves until there are no more runners alive. You'll be able to use what you learn in this video as a framework for other game modes like hide and seek, murder mystery, or even if you want to make custom round systems for maps like box PvPs. Before we get started though, if you're a map creator, I want you to stop and listen up because I'm going to tell you about something that has the ability to change the way you make maps forever. Imagine a world where you can make huge, advanced, complicated maps without needing to take the months of time and effort required to write and test the code for them. That's where the Map Creator Success Program comes in. With access to our huge library of scripts and assets, it's like having your own team of developers working on your maps who put out new updates every month, but for a fraction of the price. And it doesn't just stop there. You get access to our team for support and guidance, along with access to our exclusive community of dedicated Fortnite map creators just like you. And that is just touching the surface. So if it sounds like something you'd like and you want to get ahead of the competition by making better maps faster than ever before, then check out the Creator Success Program in the description below. Alright, so the very first thing that we're going to want to do is create a new verse script. So I'm going to go verse explorer, right click on my project name, add new verse file to project, and I'll title this our tag manager and hit create. Then I'm going to double click to open this up. And in this, I'm first going to write out what I want our script to do. So it's going to first split players up between two teams of runners and taggers. Then I want it to teleport both teams into different areas and apply their own effects. After that, I want it to track when taggers hit runners and convert the runners into taggers. And then last, I want it to track when runners get to the finish line or when there are no more runners remaining. So that's what I wanted to do. Now we need to actually make sure it does that. First up, we need to split the players up between two teams of taggers and runners. So let's go ahead and create two different teams. And we'll do that not by using the team devices. We're going to make custom teams. So I'll make arrays that hold players inside of them. So I'll say our runners, and it's an array of player is equal to array, like so. And then we have our taggers, which is another array, like so. So this is what we're going to use to actually hold each set of players in. Now let's go ahead and initialize the two teams. So we will say, after on begin, we'll call a function called initialize teams, like so. Then let's go down here and create that function called initialize teams. We're first going to get all the players in the game. So I'll say our all, or var, all players of type array player is equal to get play space dot get players. So that gets all of the current players. Then we need to pick a random player to be a tagger for however many taggers we want at the start. So I'll say for every single new tagger, which is equal to 1 to however many taggers I want. Let's say I only want one tagger. I would just put a 1 here. If I want two taggers, I'd put 2, 3, 3. This is just going to be how many taggers are chosen at the start of every game. So I'm just going to put 1 for now. Then I'll go down here and write our random number is equal to get random int from 0 to all players dot length minus 1. And in order to do this, you need to make sure to go up here and include this first.org/random. Anyways, once this random number is selected out of all of our players, then we will first get that player from our all players array. So if our selected player is equal to all players random number, so it just gets the index that it just selected from our all players array, then we'll set runners plus equal to array selected player. So we'll now add that player to our runners. Actually, we should add it to our taggers, not our runners, because we're getting the taggers right now. And then after we get that, we also want to now remove that player from this all players array. So I will write if our new array is equal to all players dot remove element random number. Then I will set all players equal to our new array. So this is going to create a new array that's equal to our all players array where we got all of the players, except it'll remove the player that we just added to our runners or our taggers. And it creates this new array, but it doesn't actually update our all players array. That's why we have to set our all players array to the new array we just created. And this will run every single time. So the second time around, it's going to pick a random number between the new length of all players with the remove player in it until all of the taggers are selected. And then after this is done, we just want to set our runners equal to whatever all players is currently equal, because it'll have all of the taggers removed from it already. So that'll automatically initialize all of our teams, but we're not done yet because I also want our teams to be teleported and also have their own special effects. So I'll go at editable, call it our runner VFX of type visual effect power up device, which we initialize with itself. And then I'm going to copy this and duplicate it and call this our tagger VFX. So now whenever the teams are initialized, I will go through every single runner in our runners and say runner VFX dot pickup runner. So we're just going to apply that VFX to all of our runners. Then we can just duplicate this down here, make sure it's aligned, but instead we'll say for every single tagger in our taggers, then our tagger VFX will be picked up for that tagger. So this will apply a VFX, but then we also want to go ahead and teleport both teams to their respective areas. So I'll say our editable runner TP of type teleporter device is equal to a teleporter device. And then I will duplicate this, but call it our tagger TP. And then the same thing here for every single runner. I'll say runner TP dot teleport runner and our tagger TP dot teleport tagger. So this is where you're going to place them in their respective areas. If they're a tagger, you probably want to put them behind a barrier and then just have a timer start. And then whenever that timer finishes, you can have that barrier drop just to add a little bit of delay so the runners can start running before the taggers start chasing them. But this will teleport them to their respective areas and apply their own effects. And that's everything we need to do to initialize the teams. And that's our first two objectives done. So I can go ahead and get rid of this. The next thing we need to do is track when the taggers hit runners and convert the runners into taggers. So to do that, we need to track when our runners get damaged. So I'll go down here and write for every single runner in runners. We'll also get our fort character. So I'll say our fort character is equal to runner.getFort character, like so. In order to do that, you're going to need to go up here and add Fortnite.com/characters. But once you have that, then we can get the damaged event. So I'll write fc.damagedEvent.subscribe, and I'll subscribe to function that'll say on runner damaged. Now I need to go down here and create that function. So I'll say on runner damaged. And if we look at this damage event, it's going to return a damage result. So I'll say our result of type damage result, and it doesn't need to return anything. And for now, I'll put a block here because there's another important thing, and that is if your runners are going to have shield, you're also going to need to go down here and write fc.damaged shield event so that that is also tracked, because this damage event is only going to work with white health. But with that, we can now go back down here and get what we need from this damage result. So in this, we have a target and an instigator and a source. So I'll go down here and write if target is equal to fort character result dot target. Our target is going to be a damageable, which can then be converted into a Fort character because a Fort character is a damageable. Then we need to go ahead and get our instigator. So I will say our instigator is equal to result.instigator, and I'll put a question mark at the end. So this question mark is going to convert it because this instigator is an optional. So now that we have this game action instigator, we can then go ahead and use dot get instigator agent. And this is going to return an agent as long as this instigator is an agent, which it should be if it's a player that's attacking them. And then we'll go ahead and get the player for both. So I'll say target player is equal to player target.get agent, and this will just get the agent from the target and then convert it to a player. And then lastly, our instigator player is equal to instigator, or actually player, and then put instigator in brackets to convert it. So now that we have everything we need here, I'll put a then, and I'll do another check because here we need to check two main things. First, we need to check if our target, the player who got hit, is still a runner and that they haven't been converted. So I'll say if runners dot find target player. So this will only return true if this target player is in our runners array. And then if they are, then we also need to check if they're only using a pickaxe or not. And currently the only way to do that is to have a bunch of conditionals for all of the different weapons in your game. So I'll say editable and all conditionals, and I'll make this a conditional button device and initialize it with an array. Whenever we're creating an array, make sure to put brackets in front of the type. Then I'll make a variable called is holding an item of type logic, which I'll initialize with false. Then I'll go through every single one of our additional buttons, so for every single conditional in all conditionals. And I also want to only continue going through this for loop if is holding an item is equal to false. Then for every single additional, I'll see if additional dot is holding item for our instigator player, and if they are, then I will set is holding an item equal to true. So what this is going to do is it creates a variable that says if the player is holding an item or not, and it goes through all of the conditionals and checks if the player is holding that item, and if they are, then it sets it equal to true. And because that is true, the for loop stops because we have this here. So this will now effectively accurately represent if the player is holding an item or a weapon, because we're already in an if statement. All right, is holding an item with a question mark at the end. And I'll say then, and also we want to make sure this is not holding an item so that they have their pickaxe out. Then we need to convert them to a tagger. Also, one more thing I will do is go back up here and say taggers.find instigator player, so that for the runner to convert the tagger, the player who damaged them also needs to be a tagger. Now let's go ahead and convert this runner to a tagger. So I'll go ahead and remove the runner from the runners array. So I'll say if our new array is equal to runners dot remove first element and then our target player. So this will create a new array that's set to our runners array, except it'll remove the first element that is equal to our target player, which is the runner that we're trying to convert. And then we'll just set our runners equal to the new array. Then lastly, we will set our taggers plus equal to array and add our target player. Then I'm going to go ahead and also copy this line so that the tagger VFX is added to the target player as well, so that they're changed. Also, if you want to have it so that once they're tagged, they're teleported back to the tagger spawn, then you can go ahead and copy this and put it there as well. But I'm just going to have it so that they're converted wherever they're standing. And with that, it's now going to properly convert runners into taggers whenever they are pickaxed by a tagger. So I can now go up here and mark this off, and we can now do the final thing, which is it should track when players get to the finish line or when there are no more runners remaining. And to do that, we're going to need to track the players who won the round and got to the ending. So I'm actually going to make a third array here, and that is safe runners. So these are runners who are going to have made it to the ending and are now safe. So in order to know when they're safe, I'm going to add a trigger, and that's going to be finish line trigger of type trigger device. Let's see what a trigger device. So track whenever this is triggered, and that's when the runner is going to become safe. So maybe you can connect some mutator volume to this trigger and have that mutator volume at the end. But I need to track when it's triggered. So I'll write finish line trigger dot triggered event dot subscribe. Also, I can go and remove these and say make runner safe. Now I'll go down here, write make runner safe. Or triggers return an optional agent. So I'll say maybe agent type optional agent returns nothing, and then I'll convert this agent. So I'll write if agent is equal to maybe agent, like so. If this doesn't make sense to you, we actually have a short about it on our channel, so I'd recommend you go check that out. But now that we have our agent, we just need to convert it. So I'll actually go up here and say our player is equal to player agent. So now that we have the player, we could then remove it from our runners array, which I'll just copy this line down here, paste it, and then replace this target player with our other player. So this is going to remove the player who's safe from the runners array. And remember down here, since we check if the runner is, or if the player is in the runners array whenever they are damaged before converting them, this will make it so that they are now invulnerable to taggers. But we need to go ahead and also set our safe runners plus equal to array and add our player, like so. This is going to make a player safe. If you want to teleport them away or something, you can also go ahead and connect that to the trigger, but I'm just going to leave that as is for now. The next thing we need to do is track if there's no more runners remaining or if the time runs out. So I'm actually going to go ahead and make an editable here and say our game timer, type timer device is equal to timer device. Then I'll make a function and I'll make sure to spawn it, and I'll call track game, like so. I'll go down here, make this track game, make sure to make it suspend. And then in this, because I'm going to be tracking two different things, I'm going to have a loop that's going to check session that will wait for the timer to finish. So I'm going to make a race where in the first block, I'm going to wait for the timer. So I'll say game timer dot success event dot await. And then I'm going to go down here and write block, and I'll make a loop where it sleeps for 0.0 seconds, then checks if our runners dot length is equal to 0. So if there's no more runners remaining, and if it does, then it will break. Then I can go under here and write what I want to happen after the game ends. So let's say I want a cinematic to play. I'll make an editable cinematic here and have it play. Or I could even say if our safe runners dot length is greater than 0, then I can go through all of my safe runners and grant them some gold. So I'll actually go and do that. I'll make an editable up here, and I'll call this our win game granter of type item granter device, like so. Then I'll say for every single one of our safe runner in safe runners, our win game granter dot grant item to this runner who made it safe. And I can maybe also play a HUD message to them, or play a sound. Anything that you want to add after the game ends, you want to add it right down here. But now I want to actually have this game reset, and I could end the round, the actual Fortnite round, and that would do it. But I'm actually going to instead make a custom round so the players don't have to wait that timer in between. So in order to do that, we're actually going to have to make a couple changes to how we did everything else. Nothing major, but I'll actually start by making a function that's going to be called start game, and I'll call it here, and then make that function down here. It doesn't need to return anything, but I am going to make sure that it suspends. So I also need to spawn it up here. And now in this, we're actually going to take all of this down here and copy it. And then under on begin, we'll call this start game. This is just so we can reuse it and we don't need to rewrite a bunch of code. But there is a few things that we actually do want to put under on begin, because we really only want them activating once. First is this triggered event, because we don't want to resubscribe to it every time a new round starts. And then we also want to go down here and take this section where we subscribe to the damage and damage shield event. And we want to change this because if this is called every time we initialize team, that'll mean that every single round that a player plays, this will activate more than once for however many rounds there are, which is not what we want. So instead, I'm actually going to go down here and make a different function that's going to be track damage, and I'll take in a player and return nothing. Then I'm going to go up here and on begin, I'm going to go through every single player and get a space dot get players. And for every single one of these players, I'm going to subscribe to that function. So I'll say track damage player, and then we don't want to forget about join in progress players. So I'll say get play space dot player added event dot subscribe to track damage, like so. Now I can go down here and write if for character is equal to get for character player, like so. Oops, made a mistake here. We gotta actually do player dot get for character. Then I'll take both of these and paste them down here. So now that that's taken care of, I can go back here to start game. And the only other things we need to do is actually reset our teams before we go ahead and initialize them. So I'll write set runners equal to array, set taggers equal to array, and set safe runners equal to array, like so. So this will reset all of our arrays. And then what we can actually also do is go up here and I'll make an editable called lobby timer, type timer device, like so. And I'll also make a lobby TP of type teleporter device, like so. And what we'll do is at the start of the game, we're going to go through every single player and get play space dot get players, and we will teleport all of the players. So lobby TP dot teleport player. So whenever the game starts, it's going to teleport all the players back to the lobby. Then we can do our lobby timer dot start and then lobby timer dot success event dot await. So this will start the timer and then wait for it to complete before initializing the teams and starting the game. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and take our game timer and go into my track game and make sure to start that timer whenever the game begins to be tracked. And just like that, we now have a fully working tag mechanic with our own custom round system. So if we go ahead and go into UEFN, we can start setting all of this up. I'll hit verse, build verse code. Then if I go to my content browser, I'll have the tag manager, which I can drag down. So first up is our runner VFX. And one quick thing before I start filling this out, because we have our VFXs, we're also going to want to go ahead and clear those at the start of the game. So I'll go and make an editable called clear VFX trigger of type trigger device, like so. The reason we have to use a trigger to clear them is for some reason in our power up device, we don't have a clear function yet. But if we go into our VFX power up in game, there is a clear function. So we're just gonna have to use a trigger to do that for now. Anyway, let's go back to our tag manager, take this clear VFX trigger and apply it to all players whenever they are teleported back to the lobby. So I'll say dot trigger for player. And we also want to use this whenever the runner becomes safe so that they don't have a runner VFX. So I'll say clear VFX dot trigger layer, like so. Now that we have that, we can go back, build verse code again, and we will have that trigger in our device. But now that we have this VFX power up, let's go ahead and fill it out. So I'll call this our runner VFX. Make sure we have infinite effect duration, set respawn time to 0, and I'll make it an outline where it's a direct color, and I'll say our runner's color is going to be blue. Then I will duplicate this, call this our tagger VFX. And because it already has all the same settings, all I have to do is change the color, which I will make red. Now I can go ahead and select both of those. Then I'm going to make my runner TP. So I'll go down here, and this I'll set both of these to none since we're teleporting them with verse. And I'll make this teleporter invisible. I'll call this our runner TP, and I'll place it over here. Then I am going to duplicate this and I'm gonna call this our tagger TP. All the same settings are fine, except I'm also gonna grab a barrier device, and I'm going to make sure it is a hollow box and put it around this teleporter. I'll make it a little bigger, but this is just going to prevent our taggers from leaving it at the start of the game. So now I'll go in here and select our runner and tagger TPs. Now we need to create conditionals for all of the different weapons in our game. So I'll go to a conditional button, drag it down. In this, turn on key items required and turn off consume key items. Then you need to select all the different weapons that are possible to get in your game. So if you have every single weapon in your game, then you're going to need a conditional button for all of them. So I'll call this weapon conditional 1, and then you want to duplicate it, select the next weapon. So let's say we have an SMG, you select that, and so on. This is the only way right now to track if the player is holding a pickaxe. So it is a little tedious, but if you don't want to do this and you don't care if they're using a pickaxe or not, then you can just go ahead and remove it and remove the conditionals from the device, as well as all of this code right here. But after you go ahead and create all the conditionals, you want to add them into this by adding elements and selecting them all. Then I'm going to make our finish line trigger. So I will make a trigger device, place it down over here where I want the finish line to be. I'll call this our finish line trigger, but I don't need any settings in this. All I have to do is go and select it. Maybe I'll actually go over here and create a button, and I'll call this our finish button. Add a text. Let's say get in helicopter or something. Add like a 2-second interaction time, and then click on my trigger and trigger it from this button, so that whenever players get to the end, they just have to hold down this button and then they escape. I could also connect a different teleporter far away, or maybe a camera that connects to the helicopter from this trigger. With that though, I can now go and make our game timer. So I'll get a timer device out, place it down. In this, I'll set the duration to 30 seconds. Keep applies to everyone, and then change the timer running text to escape in. I'll call this our game timer, and then select it. Next up, we have our win game granter. So I'll get an item granter device out. In this, I'll say on grant auction, keep all items. In this, I'll just add some gold coins, and I'll say like 50. I'll call this our win game granter and select it in the device. Then we have a lobby timer. So I'll duplicate this game timer, but call it our lobby timer. And here I'm going to make it 10 seconds, and then go here and say, I'll just call it lobby. Then I will select it. Same with our lobby TP. I want my lobby TP to be where my runners start. So I'm going to go ahead and just select my runner TP. But if you want your own separate lobby that's for the pre-game, you can select a different TP that's farther away. Lastly, we have our clear VFX trigger. For that, I'm going to duplicate this trigger. I'll call this our clear VFX trigger. Make sure to go down here and clear this triggered event. Then I'll go into this VFX. Actually, I'll select both of our VFXs, add a clear event, and then select this trigger and hit untriggered. That's very important if you want this to properly clear. Then I can go down here and select that clear VFX trigger. The last thing I'm going to do really quickly is set it up so this barrier actually goes away after the start of the game. So for that, I'm going to make another timer, and I will call this our tagger delay timer. I'll say it's like 5 seconds, and I'll say taggers release in. Then what I'll do is have this start whenever our lobby timer completes, so on success. Then what I'll have this do is disable whenever this tagger delay timer completes, and I want it to re-enable whenever the game starts again. And the only thing that we really have that activates whenever the game starts again is going to be this item granter. So I'll write on item granted. And with that, I can now go ahead and save. And then I'm going to launch session with my alt account to test this out. And then whenever this completes, it will pick a random one of us to become a tagger. The tagger will release. See, I have a blue outline and the tagger has a red outline, though I can't see that yet. That's a setting I'll need to change inside of the VFX settings. But if I go over here and get in the helicopter, then the game will end and we'll both teleport back to the lobby. There's a couple issues though. The timers also do not reset, so let's go ahead and fix both of those really quickly. If we select all three of our timers, we need to make sure to change completion behavior to reset. Also, in our script, we need to go ahead and stop our game timer whenever the game ends. So I'll say game timer dot complete. And then the last thing I need to do, or the last two things I need to do, is go into my VFXs and make sure to change who can see this power up all. Then go to my island settings and also turn on start with pickaxe so that I can actually hit other players. Then I'll go ahead and save this, disable to my devices, and then push my verse changes. And then we'll test this out one more time. So if I go ahead and start the game, we're teleported to the lobby, and if we go and wait for this timer to go down, this time you can see I am the tagger. And if I go over here and I hit the runner, then it resets and we're back in the lobby. One issue though is that if the item grantor for a player winning is not granted, then the barrier is not going to enable again. Go ahead and go back into the code, make an editable barrier of type barrier device, like so, and then go down here to when the game starts and I will enable it again. Then I can go back into my barrier, go ahead and clear this enable event, then build verse code, and then select my barrier device in our script like so. I'm also going to go ahead and really quickly change this if runners are length is equal to 0. I'm going to change it to -1 so that I can test out to make sure that the players are being converted correctly. So I'll make sure to build verse code and push verse changes. Then I'll test out if it converts. So I'll start game and wait for the lobby timer to go down. Now we'll wait for the tagger to release. And if I go ahead and get hit by the tagger, then you'll see I am now red and I am part of the taggers team. And with that, you now know how to manage players in different custom teams to create a custom tag mechanic. If you don't want to miss out on future tutorials just like this one, then make sure to subscribe. And if you have any tutorial ideas, put them in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out the Creator Success Program if you want to take the next step in making better Fortnite maps. It'll be the first link in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.